make sure I look in the right direction, which I think is where I'm looking now. You're all welcome. What I need to say is whatever they've written for me. No, essentially, I mean, it's very much like all other meetings. For those who don't know me, I'm Alan Hale. I'm chair currently of this group. Adrian Inker, who is on your screen. Adrian is the vice chairman. And we're obviously looking forward to our speakers this evening. And also, if you have questions, it will generate some discussion, perhaps feedback, suggestions. And please do remember to sign into the meeting so that we have a record of who's attended, and can ensure you're on our mailing list. So we like to keep people involved and obviously hope that they will come back again. We've received apologies from Chris Hansel and Dave Biddleston, but he's here. You're here, Dave?
Did I send apologies, Alan? I apologise for sending apologies.
I've got it written down for you, but you're most welcome.
I do have to leave by 7:20 as I've got another meeting to go to.
Hopefully we've all gone by 7. Yeah. But that depends on all of you. Right, this evening is also the forum's AGM. We were asked previously, and Adrian and myself are pleased to continue to stand in the roles that we're standing in. But obviously, if there are any other sort of proposals from the floor, they will be taken. So I don't know, are we doing that now or
Yeah. Get out the way.
Yeah. Dave Dixon is online with us, and Dave, I think you're going to take the chair, as it were, for the purposes of the election and receipt of any other proposals as well. So I'll hand over to you. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. In advance of this evening's meeting, I know that Alison circulated terms of reference, which includes the membership list for this particular forum. So any suggested amendments or proposals for further members to join them, please, in the first instance, if you can contact either Alison or Sarah, who gives her apology she can't be here this evening. So, but we have had as nominations. We've received one nomination for chair, which is for Alan Hale to continue as chair of the forum. Is there anybody else that wishes to put themselves forward, or is there anybody else that we know of who would like to be nominated? I'm not hearing anything. So in which case, congratulations, Alan. I can say that you are now continuing as the chair of the Keynsham Area Forum for the next 12 months. We've also, sorry, I've got one person to let in. I'll let them in now. We've also had a nomination for vice chair of the forum, which is Adrian Inker. And again, if there are no other nominations or nobody is nominating themselves, then I will propose that, Adrian, you become the vice chair of the Keynsham Area Forum, again for the next 12 months until the next AGM. I'm not hearing any dissenting voices. I'm not seeing any hands raised. So congratulations, Alan. Congratulations, Adrian. And Chair,
Thank you very much.
I can hand back to you for the minutes and the other bits and bobs.
That's very kind. Okay, thank you. Thank you, folks, for your confidence in me, or the fact you didn't want the job. I don't know, you know. So notes from the previous AGM, which was held on the 20th of September 23, were circulated well in advance. Are these agreed as a true record? I imagine there must be one or two who were at that meeting. Thanks, Andy and Adrian. Okay, thank you very much. The AGM report for 23-24 was also circulated in advance of this evening. For you to note, it highlights the many topics of the Keynsham Area Forum has covered over the past year, and we thank people for their continued input. And we have had quite a variety. So if nothing else, it's a lot of information that we can gather from various groups, various people. So I think it does suggest that this is well worth it. We've got to review, or are we reviewing and amending the terms of reference?
Only if anybody had any.
Right. So has anybody got any sort of anything they want to change within the terms of reference or membership? We'll move on. Okay. Thank you for that. We've done that. So that's the end of the AGM. So we're now into the ordinary meeting. And according to, there's a line here that says it's 1 hour and 10 minutes. So there's your target, folks. The first item is a police update. And we don't appear to have anybody from the local constabulary. And nobody's waiting in the waiting room, so we'll move on. So the first is a community showcase. So I'd like to welcome Catherine Danjal, and I'm not quite sure whether I pronounced that right because I always call her Kath. Oh, that's right. Kath is the secretary of the Keynsham District Talking newspaper, and is here to tell us more about that service. So all yours, Kath.
Good evening, everyone. Thanks very much for giving us the opportunity to talk about Keynsham District Talking newspaper tonight. So my name is Catherine Danjel, and I'm one of the trustees and the secretary of the charity. The area that we cover is basically what you can see on the map, so not too dissimilar to the map that you shared for the various area forums earlier. So we cover Keynsham, Salford, Bristol, Bath, North Somerset, Chew Valley, up to Gloucester, across to sort of across towards Chippenham and so on. But we do welcome listeners from anywhere in the England, anywhere in the UK, in fact, who've got an interest in Keynsham, Bristol, Bath and the surrounding areas. So as you can see, we celebrated our 40-year anniversary recently. We were established in 1983, which is an incredible record. And over that time, we've produced something like 1,800 recordings and have served many, many listeners over that time as well. We are a registered charity and have been since the outset. The service is entirely free to listeners. We're entirely staffed by volunteers, so nobody is on paid staff, nobody's drawing a salary. And we have about 100 listeners a week. So they are predominantly people who are of the older generation who don't have access to smartphones, computers, broadband. Although we do have some people who are computer literate and who do use those services in their own home. In order to receive the service, people need to be registered blind or partially sighted, or basically unable to read newsprint for whatever reason. And part of the reason for that is because we have to comply with copyright regulations in terms of the news material and sometimes the magazine items we read out, and also so that people can benefit from the free postal service for Royal Mail items for the blind. As I said, our listeners predominantly live in Keynsham, Salford, Bristol, Bath. So we had a new listener recently from Stockwood. We had a new listener recently from Back Lane in Keynsham. But they are further afield as well. So Chew Valley, there's quite a pocket of people, North Somerset as well. We've got around 85 volunteers. Alan is our new chairperson. Thank you, Alan, for stepping in recently, and we're delighted to have you on board. And Alan has been a big supporter of KTN since the beginning. So he's often attended events and done interviews for us and so on. So yeah, we have around 85 volunteers, and that was one of the questions Alan asked me recently, was how many people are involved. So I had to do a quick head count. And then our committee. So as well as Alan recently joining as chairperson, we've also recently had a chap called Paul Hunt, who's joined us as our new treasurer, who's also treasurer for the Kingswood Heritage Centre, which you may know about. So very pleased to have him on board as well. So this is to show you the envelope that I mentioned. So that's how the USB stick arrives. So it pops through the letterbox of our listeners on a weekly basis. We have so many listeners who send little notes or call us up and say, I love hearing the sound of that envelope plopping through the letterbox. It's got obviously a very distinctive sound when it's arrived. And they say things like, you know, it feels like friends are coming to visit, because they recognise the voices of our volunteers who are reading out the news and the magazine items. About 18 months ago, we were able to launch the Listen Online service. So that means that people can listen through the website to the 2 latest recordings. And that was actually quite a big sort of development for us. Again, it has to be copyright protected. So there's a password that we give to listeners and they put in. I mentioned that most people have a box that they use to listen to the USB sticks, but we are seeing an increase in the number of people who have got broadband or a way to listen through the website as well. And I actually heard about a lady earlier this week who's got a USB box upstairs and a computer downstairs, so she, you know, has her choice of how she listens to the KTN service. And of course, people can listen to the USB stick numerous times for that week, or they can start and stop, and the same for the website service. Something really exciting which we're actively investigating at the moment is there's a special app for Alexa, which is provided by the wireless British Wireless for the Blind service. And it's an app that people who are blind or partially sighted can register on. So that ticks the copyright compliance box, and then they can connect that with their Alexa, and then obviously if they have an Alexa, they can simply say, Alexa, play me Keynsham Talking Newspaper. So that's something that one of our committee is sort of doing a project of investigating at the moment. We're very much hoping that we can get that going live as well. We're seeing a huge increase in the number of Alexas in people's homes, you know, the older generation as well. It's a bit of a lifeline for some people. This is a snapshot of our 40th anniversary celebration, which we had in Keynsham. And I wanted to give you a bit of a flavour as well about how we go about attracting new listeners. So we redesigned our website probably 4 or 5 years ago, and it's looking really quite modern and fresh still. Oh, sorry, Dave. And we also have a series of leaflets. So you may well have seen the distinctive sort of yellow and black leaflets. The thinking behind that is that research shows that people who are blind and people who are partially sighted, it's much easier for them to read black writing on a yellow background. So when you see our materials, you'll see they use those colourways. So you'll probably see our leaflets in places like the library, the opticians, the doctors, etc. And every time we see volunteers, we ask them to take a stack of leaflets and take them where they go on their daily life, you know, the coffee shop, the doctors, etc. We also have some A4 posters, which again, you'll probably have seen in local opticians, maybe the doctors and so on. Our Facebook page works quite well for us, and we tend to share the posts we put up on that out into the local groups, and Alan does that with his groups. I do that with the groups I'm in, and we sort of disseminate the information that way. Word of mouth is really strong for us as well. So if you are talking to people and somebody says, oh, you know, my grandma's got macular degeneration, or, you know, you hear about another issue which means that someone can't read newsprint, please do tell them about our free service. And, you know, I think that they would really enjoy receiving it. The local press have been hugely supportive of us as well. So Keynsham Voice, The Week In, the Bath Chronicle, and then down into sort of Midsummer Norton as well. So really great. Alan did a radio interview on, I think, Radio Bristol for us recently as well, so that was fantastic. And then we do go to events. So we went to an event recently, which was from something called 3SG, which you may have heard of, which is for charities and sort of health and care groups in the region. And that was very good. We basically had the opportunity to talk to lots of people who might like to become volunteers with KTN. There's a few of our key referrers that I've put down here. So we have a very good partnership with Deafblind Plus, who's at the Bath office, and also with Vision West of England. Some of the local assisted living and nursing homes have people who have a role of sort of coordinator or entertainments or manager, and they're also very good about referring listeners and saying, you know, I've just had somebody move in, could I set the service up for them? On the left here is Carol. She's one of our long-time listeners, and she's got one of the boxes there. You can probably just about see it in the picture. Again, it's black and yellow, and it's especially designed for people who are blind or partially sighted. We bought a stack of those a number of years ago, and we provide those on long-term loan to listeners so that they can, it's a very easy to use box. You put the USB stick in, it auto plays. And when we record the news in the magazine, we do it in tracks so that people can start and stop and go back very easily in approximately 45-second gaps. Top right here are a couple of our new volunteers, Emily and Sue, who are on the technician side. And then this is a picture from our Salford recording studio. So we've got that space permanently to ourselves. And on the one hand, it may sound like a bit of a luxury, but it's really not, because we've got our recording equipment. It's set up exactly how we need it. And during COVID, we were one of the very few talking newspapers in the country which was able to continue recording throughout the COVID period. And that was because we initially went right down to family groups. So people were bringing in their, you know, their wife or their child or their husband and recording like that. And then as things got a bit freer, we started introducing a couple of other people and then went back up to our normal numbers. So some of our key aims for 2025, we are looking to develop stronger links with referrers. We think that there is a lot of potential, a lot more people who are in the, you know, in the wider region who could benefit from having the service and would enjoy the service. And then new referrers come on board as well, or new potential referrers. So new charities start up, new healthcare people come into roles, etc. We will be starting to fundraise and apply for grants, which is something we've not done for a number of years because we had quite a sizable reserve, but we're now at the point where we need to actively start looking for monies coming in. And volunteer recruitment, I'm sure this will resonate with many of you. We're constantly looking for volunteers. So some people stay with us for literally decades. And some people, it fits into their life that they can only come for a year or so. So volunteer recruitment is always high on our agenda. And we're also looking to do more talks and outreach and join relevant organisations. So this is a fantastic introduction, and thank you for inviting me, and hopefully we can become more involved in this forum. So in terms of how you could help, if you do come across anyone who you think would be a potential listener, do put them in touch with us. Or if you have potential referrers, so charities, people in the third sector, government, local government, please do let us know. If you see us on social media, please do give us a like or put a comment. If you have funding that you've got direct access to, you know, please do have a think about us as well. And then finally, this is a picture of a few of our committee. Not everybody was able to be there on the night, but I expect there's some faces you'll recognise. So Mike Corrigan from KTCR-FM, Alan, of course, John Lai, who's our listener representative on the committee, Georgina, who works at Norville Opticians, Mary Bernard, who started the service 40 odd years ago, and then John Kahn, who you may know as well from local church work, essentially. I'd also like to say that we've had some really generous donations already over the past year when we started sort of mentioning that we needed to fundraise. So Keynsham Rotary Club and Bristol Brunel Lions, as well as individuals, have come forward and given us donations for which we're hugely appreciative. And these are our contact details. And I'd welcome any questions if anybody has any. Thank you.
Does anybody have any questions?
Dave Biddleston.
Sorry, who?
Dave Biddleston's got one.
Yeah.
There's three.
Adrian then, please.
Thank you, Dave. I was just asking Catherine, how do you go around selecting the content for the Talking newspaper? Because there must be a wealth of different stuff out there. You know, do you keep it relevant and keep it up to date, more or less? Because people's expectations change. Don't you get a younger group of people in? What they might find interesting wouldn't necessarily be the same as an older group. It must be difficult trying to keep everybody interested.
Yeah, it is a challenge. So we have, on the news side, we have editors. So we have a rota of news editors. So they go through the local papers online and in print every week and select items of interest. They have a brief to select from Bristol, Bath, Keynsham, North Somerset, Chew Valley. So covering those sort of 5 key areas, making sure that somebody who's you know, in Chewton, Keynsham doesn't feel excluded from the news that they're hearing. And in terms of what we select, we try and select items which are genuinely of local interest or have a local tie. So if they're sitting listening to ITV News or BBC West Country or whatever, you know, they won't be hearing the items that are on the mainstream channels on the KTN service. So it's more items which are more local interest. On the magazine side, it can be anything from a recipe that somebody's tested out. So mug recipes that you can do in the microwave are really popular with our listeners. People do things like describing a walk that they've gone on recently. So a lot of our listeners used to have some sight, and that's declined over the years. So that evokes so many memories. So that's a fantastic thing. Poems, gardening tips, items about people who, for example, there was a piece recently about someone from Bristol who's going to go and run a post office in Antarctica. So that kind of quirky, you know, upbeat story as well is, you know, we try to have some of those. Or, you know, Bristol Zoo's given birth to a rare species. Those kind of stories are also nice, sort of upbeat ones.
Dave.
Thank you. Some irony in the fact that we're losing our post office and the Antarctica are gaining a post office, which is an interesting set of affairs. Now, I was going to ask, have you come across an organisation called Be My Eyes?
No, I don't think we have, no.
I just wanted to mention it. I heard about it on the radio the other day, and it looks like it could be fantastic. But once again, for those that are maybe more proficient with smartphones, but it's an app that can call upon a visually sighted person to look at what the visually impaired individual is trying to show them on the smartphone so that they can recognize it more easily. So to give you a scenario, it's often used when people need to know that the clothing that they're wearing is appropriate and not maybe particularly odd colours. So it's particularly popular for that reason. So the sighted person will be able to say, no, that orange tie doesn't go with that green suit, for example. So that's a very simplistic example about what it does. But Be My Eyes is certainly something that I think you might like to feature and could be a really useful thing.
Yeah, thanks, Dave. Yeah, we'll look into that, and that's certainly something that we'd look to talk about on the magazine side. So one of the things that we have, which is really useful, is news coming through from Vision West of England in particular, and they sometimes send us information about training that they're doing on iPads or tablets or that kind of thing. And Be My Eyes isn't something that I've seen coming through from them either. So I'll make sure to add that to our rota.
Okay. Sorry. I don't see any. Excuse me. I don't see any. Oh,
Our end. Thank you.
sorry, Baron.
Good evening. Interesting to hear what's happening locally. My wife contributes to Month in Bath, and I was wondering to what extent you work with the other speaking newspapers around the place to maybe coordinate your activity or share your mailing lists.
As far as I know, we don't share our mailing lists. We do cross-share information where we can, and the Month in Bath is certainly something that our listener liaison officer often, speaks to and shares information with through phone calls. We Vision West of England as well are going to be compiling a list of local talking newspapers. There's also, a lot of information online about local talking newspapers, and there's the Talking Newspaper Federation as well. We don't sort of compete, if you like, with someone like the Month in Bath, because obviously they're a monthly publication, so whereas we're weekly, so we have that quite large news content, whereas theirs is more what you might call magazine focus. So we would expect listeners to be very happy to have the Month in Bath as well as Keynsham Talking Newspaper. So we do try and keep those links alive. There's also a couple of talking newspapers which are up in the Stroud and Gloucester region, which one of our listeners actually told us about recently, who we've also been in touch with. So we're always happy to hear about talking newspapers and to see them going, and see them thriving.
Okay, thanks, Catherine. Andy?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Mine's a fairly trivial and mundane question, which is basically what I'm like. I noticed that you use memory sticks for the purpose of transferring your information. Is there a return system that the reader can get back to you so you can reuse these things, or do they keep them?
Yeah, so it's actually, if I just go back to this, it's actually quite a complicated behind the scenes system. But in a nutshell, once a week we record the news we record the magazine either on a Tuesday or a Wednesday. Then we record the news on a Thursday evening, and then the technician who looks after the news side stitches together the news and the magazine, so it's one package, and that package then gets copied on our high-speed copiers in the studio. Each one of those is then checked to make sure that the USB stick isn't corrupted or sort of failing, that we've got the right week's issue on that USB stick, etc. And then those are put into a case. The case containing most of them is taken to a lady who then takes them down to Keynsham Post Office, who are excessively kind to us, incredibly kind, and they take all of those 85 or 90 sticks, and they the lady who we give the case to also puts them into the envelopes that you see here. So they then go down as a package to the post office. The post office sorts out the ones which are ultra local and immediately sort of gets them into circulation. So sometimes people will even receive the talking newspaper on a Friday, even though we've only taken the sticks down on the Friday morning. The ones which are not so ultra local, get sorted differently by the post office. When the listener has finished listening, so which is generally about Wednesday of the week after they receive it, they turn the little label round that you can see here, put the USB stick back in, pop it in the box. And although the address on there is actually our listener liaison in Manor Road in Keynsham, again, Keynsham sorting office are incredibly helpful to us, and they catch as many of those as they can and put them into a big sack So when the lady takes down the case with the, say, this week's tapes, she collects the sack of the last week's tapes.
Very good explanation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Andy. Right, we must move on. Kath, thank you very much for attending.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Thank you. I've learned something as well, which is good. I'm slightly offended by Dave because I think my orange tie goes very well with my green suit, but you know, each to their own. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
If you need to go, you can, but equally, if you want to hang on, we shall only, well, I don't know how long we'll be, but probably within an hour at the very outside. But somebody whispering, yeah, from here. So Alison is obviously quite sure that we're going to work well. Right, okay.
Thank you.
We're moving now to the local plan. And I'd like to introduce Alice Nunn, who is the Principal Planning Officer with Planning Policy at Baines. So Alice, you're on, as it were. The screen is yours, and
Lovely.
we look
Thank you
forward
very
to
much.
what you're bringing to us.
That's great. Thanks so much. I'm just going to share my screen. I've still got the other presentation up. Oh, it's gone now. Brilliant. I'll just share my screen. Hope everyone can see that. So yeah, thanks for inviting me along this evening. I'm going to update you on the reset of the Baines local plan. Just as a reminder, we did, I think it was Richard and George did a sort of more full update on the local plan for all parish and town councils a couple of weeks ago. That was really well attended, so thanks to those who came along. And we sent a link to the slides and the recording of that meeting to all the clerks. And that's available at the links that I've put on this set of slides. And I think I'm right in saying, Alison, that these slides will get sent out to attendees. Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah,
they will.
Brilliant, lovely. That's great. So there's a link in there to the sort of more full briefing for anyone that's interested. You just have to pop the password that's on the screen there into that if you'd like to see that. And that briefing, it took parish and town councils through revisions to national policy, which were published for consultation in the summer and have led to the resetting of the local plan, why we need to reset the local plan and sort of next steps. And it particularly focuses on work that we want to do with yourselves and community groups and parishes and councillors across the district. And Richard Dayon, who heads up the planning policy team, also provided an update to Keynsham Town Council recently. So I apologise in advance if some of you have already seen these slides. You may well have done, but hopefully it's of interest to some. So yeah, just as a brief reminder, in the summer, the government published changes to the National Planning Policy Framework, or the NPPF, as well as some other changes to the planning system. They're seeking to finalise the NPPF prior to parliamentary recess, which I think is on the 19th of December. So we may actually have the final NPPF this side of Christmas, which would be good. And just to summarise, the changes to the NPPF, they're really significant for us, particularly in relation to the way that the government are seeking to, well, they're seeking to better facilitate economic growth through delivery of more housing. So most notably for us at Baines, alongside those updates to the NPPF, the government's also publishing a new calculation, which looks at how you work out housing targets for the number of homes that all local authorities will be required to plan for. And for us, that's really significant in terms of the increase in housing figures. So our housing figures more than doubled. We were previously planning for around 14,500 homes over a 20-year plan period, but based on the new calculation, that increases to over 29,000. So it really is really significant. And there are also changes in there about Greenbelt, needing to review the Greenbelt in order to release land for housing. And there's a really big emphasis on encouraging economic growth. And just to note there, in terms of housing, the emphasis is on delivery of more sort of affordable social housing, which is obviously certainly welcomed by this council. So yes, as I said, changes are really significant for us. And the government did set out what they call transitional arrangements, which are they're the arrangements under which local authorities can, well, if they're able to sort of progress their local plans under the current national policy and current housing figures. But we've looked at that closely, and we're not able to do that and still end up with a sound plan, just because of how significant that increase in the housing requirement is for us. So the council's cabinet has agreed to reset the local plan. Resetting doesn't mean sort of ripping up what we've done before and starting again. What we've done so far in terms of looking at potential site options and engagement and consultation with stakeholders and communities on those options is still really relevant. And also the responses that we received on the previous consultation are still being very carefully considered. But because of the scale of the increase in housing requirement, we do have to reset in order to carry out more evidence-based work, in particular looking at options again for development. And clearly we want to do that in correspondence with stakeholders such as yourselves. So we will need to carry out fairly significant engagement with yourselves from in the early new year onwards. So not surprisingly, the programme for the local plan has changed. Some of you have seen this already. This is our previous programme. We were looking to work towards consultation on a draft local plan, which is the plan that we submit to the Planning Inspectorate for examination early next year, and with the aim to submit it to the Planning Inspectorate in the summer next year. But that has all shifted by around 12 months. So this is the new programme. So we are going to include, we're going to be carrying out another options consultation, which will look at further options for development in the summer or autumn of next year. And then we'll be moving to a consultation on the draft local plan, which is when the council sort of set out its preferred approach to policies and site allocations in spring 2026. And then we'll submit to the Planning Inspectorate for examination in summer 2026. And then from then on, the programme's in the hands of the Planning Inspectorate really, but hopefully we are looking to adopt the plan in early 2027. So yeah, just to emphasise again, because of the significant changes, we need to be working together with yourselves on assessing the potential to develop for sort of additional development across the district. We're just finalising an updated communications and engagement plan for the local plan. We did publish a version previously, but we obviously need to update that now to take into account the additional consultation that we'll need to carry out. And that will outline sort of strategies for engaging stakeholders and communities over the coming months. We'll be publishing the updated plan in January, so stakeholders can be aware of when engagement's likely to take place. And we're also going to be considering whether there might be engagement tools available to the council that we haven't used before. We're thinking sort of particularly in relation to reaching a wider demographic of people that might not perhaps usually be involved in something like the local plan as a project. And in terms of engagement, we'll be undertaking sort of a mixture of more broad but also targeted engagement. So both district-wide engagement on some of the planning policy areas, which are sort of district-wide, relevant district-wide, but also more targeted engagement, particularly with communities where there might, for example, be more change, and also looking to ensure that that engagement's more representative of the population as a whole. We are also reviewing our lessons learned from the previous options consultation. There was some concern, particularly from town and parish councils, about the complexity of the consultation and the difficulty of responding to that. So we're going to be working with various teams across the council, including the web team, to try to ensure that that is a sort of simpler process next time in terms of responding. And then in addition, we're also looking at how we can align better within the council with other consultations that might be happening around the same time, because we're very conscious that there is lots of different consultations across lots of different services, planning, transport, regeneration, etc. So we're going to look to see if we can link in with some of those and sort of carry them out as because they're all linked as sort of one consultation if it's possible to do so. So I guess the key messages coming out of all of that is that we're going to be looking to engage and work with yourselves in the first half of next year in preparing options, and then there'll be a full public consultation on those options before we move forwards towards preparing the draft plan. So it's a relatively quick update, but I'm happy to take any questions if there are any.
Yeah, Duncan.
Thank you, Alice, and you're absolutely right to flag up the size of this, of the scale of this. It's like building a village the size of Salford every year for 20 years. It's a massive exercise. Now, I've got two questions. Now, one is the revised government formula takes into account affordability, because obviously houses in this area aren't very affordable, particularly in Bath. But as we know, Bath has got the UNESCO World Heritage status, and part of that is the universal value of the green setting of Bath, which means it's very, very difficult at the moment to allow expansion. Now, I'm concerned that officers and councillors aren't appreciating how urgent it is to get agreement with UNESCO to change things. I've heard people talk about 10 years to change that, but clearly North East Somerset cannot take all of this additional housing where if Bath, the state of Bath is not changed. There's a consultation at the moment. I haven't read it, but it's the City of Bath Great Spa Towns of Europe World Heritage Site Management Plan. And there's a deadline for that 8-week consultation, so it probably finishes about sort of January. I doubt if there's anything in there about expansion. So is the planning department taking very seriously the urgency to have changes to allow Bath to expand and build for its needs? Thank you.
Sure, thanks, Duncan. Yeah, well, I think, I mean, Richard, it might be something that I need to speak to Richard about, but it's basically, I presume you're talking about west of Bath as an area, probably because we have looked and we have had assessment, as you know, undertaken, sort of evidence undertaken in terms of landscape and heritage impact on developing to the west of Bath. See, that has come back. Our evidence base currently shows that it would be harmful to the World Heritage Site for any development to take place to the west of Bath. But we do understand that sort of members and people across the council do want sort of additional work undertaken in relation to that, and that does include correspondence with UNESCO. So yes, that is something that's going on. We are concerned, as you said, about the timescales relating to that, and it's something that might have to be undertaken alongside this local plan, but for looking at development in the future. But I mean, I'm possibly not best placed to answer any questions in detail on that, but I can certainly feed back to Richard your concerns as he's leading on sort of that piece of work.
Thank you. Can I just have a second question? Just a brief comment on what you've just said. Just to say that I think west of Bath wouldn't be anywhere near enough for Bath needs. It needs to be a substantial expansion of Bath. But my second question is, in the options that were out for public consultation earlier this year, lots around Keynsham, lots around Salford, etc., etc. Now, if you add up everything that was in that, it doesn't touch the numbers that are being asked for. Now, what worries me is that to have something that's found to be sound, you will feel pressured to put everything into the pot and build everywhere, and actually abandon sort of the planning principles. I would just ask you, are you as a planning department, are you willing to say, to be brave, if you like, and at the public hearings eventually to argue why places shouldn't take the housing, even though it would mean that the numbers aren't met?
I would say that we haven't done the assessment work yet to understand what the numbers would mean, and if there are options, for example, for new settlements in the district, or sort of expansion of existing settlements. We haven't actually done that assessment work yet, so we don't know what the numbers will be saying. So we don't know what the constraints that need to be taken into account are as of yet. So I can't really provide a comment on what we're going to be taking to examination, because we're just not there yet. But it's something that I think we'll obviously have to work with yourself and other councillors and communities as well to sort of to get an understanding of that. And that's the work we're going to be undertaking, I guess, from early in the new year onwards.
Okay, so it won't be just a numbers game.
It's not, well, there's, as you know, Baines is extremely constrained in a number of, for a number of reasons. World Heritage Site in Bath, we've got 2 national landscapes, we've got a lot of green belts, so that all needs to be taken into account. And but we need to base it around what national policy is saying to us as well. So in terms of how we can take those constraints into account. But yes, certainly we're currently assessing sites based on what we call the spatial principles, and so they take into account constraints. But it's, as I say, it's something that we're working on at the moment. So we'll need to carry on doing that into the new year.
Thank you, Alice. Right, I've got 2 hands up, so we'll just take those 2 and then we'll conclude with this. Adrian, you're first.
Thank you, Alan. I touched on this when we had the presentation last time. I really struggle to understand the fragmentation of the local plans across the whole district. When you've got Baines doing one thing, Bristol doing something else, North Somerset doing something else again, South Gloss doing something else. And to make all this work, and it is a massive task, as Duncan touched on, these numbers are fantastic, but the other areas that go with them as well. There's no good building the houses if you haven't got proper public transport systems, which can only work across a bigger strategic area. The economic development, the growth that you're talking about, again, can only be built across the 2 drivers of Bristol and Bath, which is the main drivers of economic growth. And to me, I just struggle to fail to understand why it isn't done on a much more bigger strategic area. Call it the X-Haven area, call it what you like. But I think you get economies of scale. You get much more flexibility around working in that way.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, I agree with you. And I think the role of WECA is quite important in that. Unfortunately, the WECA SDS, the Spatial Development Strategy, which was being worked up, which covered, it wasn't all Somerset, it's Bristol, Bath and Bristol, Baines and South Gloss. Unfortunately, that was halted a couple of years ago. That would have sort of given us more of a, I guess, a structure with other councils. But I would say that we work closely with other councils and also with WECA in terms of sort of strategic transport, etc. So we still work closely with those parties, and we do have to sort of come to common agreement in terms of working with them on the local plan. But I mean, I do agree with you. It would be better if there was that sort of overarching, I guess, strategy that WECA brings together. I think I've heard recently that WECA are working on what they're calling growth plans for a growth plan for the area. So it's not going to be a statutory document like the SDS was going to be, but it will form sort of an initial sort of growth plan for the whole of the Western England Combined Authority. So that will be, I guess that will be helpful. We just need to work out the timescales. Obviously, as you know, probably know, Bristol's already submitted their local plan for examination, so everyone's working on a slightly different timescales, but having that overarching growth plan will hopefully be helpful in terms of investment, sort of focusing investment in the future in terms of sustainable transport, as you say. So yeah, but I mean, I agree with you completely.
Okay, thank you. Dave.
Thank you. Yes, so just 3 points, if I may, Alice. It's lovely to see you, and thank you for putting up with us again. And probably the one point you know what I'm going to bring up anyway. But first of all, I think we are stuck as councillors, particularly between a bit of a rock and a hard place, because essentially everybody's in favour of having affordable houses built, and by affordable they mean, you know, for their families, either social housing or housing that they, you know, their children can actually afford. But we're not very good at saying, but we're happy to have the housing built near us. So I'm happy to say that over my back fence, a huge estate was built. Very, very happy to say that. But actually, we need to start being braver about having those conversations about the necessity to take some sites away for housing development. We all agree with the principle that housing must be built. We don't like residents having it built in their back garden. And Salford, to give Duncan his credit, are particularly good at saying that we do not want housing in our particular areas when local plans are announced. So the fact that, my second point is the fact that the UNESCO thing is causing such agitation, and yet when we drive into A4 along the Lower Bristol Road, we noticed that the old Morris Minor garage, do you remember that, has gone and been significantly replaced by a good number of high-rise student flat accommodations. So how is it that you can do that for students in Bath, but you can't do that for the people of Bath? That does seem wrong to me. And my third point is that Keynsham, once again, will be lumped upon with significant housing development. But we are not getting the facilities that we deserve in recompense, either in terms of transport infrastructure or leisure facilities. Now, I visited Bishop Sutton last night to go and visit their extraordinarily big hall that is far bigger than anything we have in Keynsham. We need, if we're going to be telling the people of Keynsham that they are going to have to put up with significant housing development, we need to give them some good news as well. And I'd like to underline that point. Thank you.
Thanks, David. That's, yeah, all taken on board. I think your point around students, it's an interesting one, because I don't know how much you know about sort of our current policies that we brought in the local plan partial update, but that looked to sort of restrict student accommodation, sort of purpose-built student accommodation, a lot more in Bath. Obviously the universities are seeking to grow, and we work with them closely to understand sort of their growth requirements. We're still awaiting their sort of most recent growth requirements, but we currently have a policy which says campus first, and if it's not on campus, it should be very specifically linked to a university, so you don't just get sort of blocks of PBSA popping up all over the place. So that has looked to restrict that. But I understand what you're saying, that, you know, there's a lot in Bath already, isn't there? So but yeah, we're going to look to continue sort of that restrictive policy through to the new local plan as well. And take your point on sort of leisure facilities. I've just to let you know that I've been in contact with our regen team recently. Caroline Lightfoot is leading on the sort of Keynsham town centre renewal programme, so I sent her through all of the sort of the very helpful questionnaires, etc., that you sent through in terms of theatre provision. So we're working on that together, and yeah, so we have that. But thank you for raising that.
Duncan, I know you've got your hand up. I know you want to come back, but I'm not going to open it up because it will just bounce backwards and forwards. Take it as a compliment. I think it was meant as a compliment.
No. I just wanted to make a general point very quickly to David, saying I agree with David in the sense that including Keynsham, communities mustn't get swamped, so that the essential characteristics of places remain. That's the only point I was going to make.
No, that's fine, and I would reinforce that point, and I would also just take one opportunity to say, Alice, that you must have infrastructure, because it is absolutely essential. The only difference in Keynsham from when I came to Keynsham back in the 50s is they built a bypass, and then Wecker want to narrow it down to 1 lane. Well, if they had witnessed Keynsham High Street the other morning when the bypass was closed, then they would perhaps think again, because once that bypass builds up, people will come through Keynsham, and we haven't got the roads for it. We haven't got the roads for the number of houses that are there now. And yet, you know, somebody's wanting us to build many, many more houses and gives no sort of consideration to the roads. I don't need you to answer that, unless you want to say, yes, I agree. But we need to move on. Alice, thank you very much for coming to us talking about very important stuff that the community will be affected by. Yeah, so thank you very much. Very kind.
Thanks
Again,
very much, Rob.
if you want to stay and, you know, listen, then you're more than welcome. If you want to go, we shan't be offended.
Lovely. Thanks very much, Alan. Bye then.
All right. I'd like to now introduce Sarah Grimes. Sarah here? Oh, yeah.
Hi. Hello.
And, oh, Nicola Brain.
Hello. Hi.
Oh, yeah. And you're both from the Bath and West Community Energy.
Nicola's from Baines.
Oh, sorry. Nicola is from Baines, and it's
And
Sarah from, oh, yeah, you're from Baines as well, aren't you?
Oh, no. Bath and West.
I must
Used to
read
be.
all the way across my briefing sheet. All yours.
So Sarah, yes, was at Baines for many years and is now at Bath and West Community Energy. I joined Baines last year, and we've also got Ellie Bryant on the call, who joined 2 weeks ago as a project manager for the project that we're about to talk about. We've let Ellie off doing the presentation, given that she's new, but she will be leading on this project going forward. So that's the 3 of us here to talk to you today. So I'm just going to share my screen. Can you see that now? Yep. Sorry, I can't see anybody's faces anymore, so I can't see if I'm getting thumbs up. Someone just shout if they can see the screen.
Yes, we can.
Brilliant, thank you. Okay, so we're here to talk to you today about a new project that we're launching next year. So we are creating a Baines Community Energy Network. It's a lottery climate action funded project, which is a partnership between the Council, Bath and West Community Energy, the Community Wellbeing Hub, and the University of Bath. And it's a 3-year project funded through the Lotteries Climate Action Fund, with the overarching aim to increase participation in the energy transition. And by that we mean looking at home energy, so what people want to do in their own homes, supporting healthier and greener homes, and also community-owned renewable energy. So working in partnership between these organisations and also in partnership with local communities. So I'm sure most of you on the call won't need to be reminded, but the reason that the council has supported this project and we've sort of led on bidding for this money is that obviously we've declared a climate emergency, we've got a new climate and nature strategy coming forward next year, and we've got some key targets around becoming net zero in our own operations as a council, but also developing 300 megawatts of renewable generation across Baines by 2030. And retrofitting 65,000 homes. So that's the number of existing homes that have been identified as needing some sort of energy efficiency improvements. And there's also a strong commitment to supporting community-led energy development to ensure that the community gets the benefit of those developments. So I'll just pass to Sarah to talk a little bit about BWCE.
Hi there. So thanks, Nikki. So and yeah, great to be here this evening. So some of you might be familiar with Bath and West Community Energy. We got started in 2010, and really our first mission was to install renewable energy. So we've done that at a lot of the local schools, so particularly around the Bath area, down in Midsummer Norton and Radstock. And with those school roof schemes, we are able to sell power at a lower rate to the schools, which has saved them a lot of money during the energy crisis. And keep the revenues from that and then reinvest it in our community fund for local projects. So we've granted out over £380,000 to schemes that help benefit the environment. So it can be quite broadly construed, really. So it can be anything from crop drop, which you see here, through to paying for insulation for village halls. We put a heat pump in Bath City Farm. And also help fund during the energy crisis things like slow cookers and electric blankets to community centres for people who are really struggling with their bills. We've also got some biodiverse solar fields in the area. We just had the biodiversity report back from one of our schemes, and it's 150% more biodiverse than it was before we installed the scheme, which we're really proud of. Worked with Wiltshire Wildlife Trust to build a scheme like this that's enhanced biodiversity. So yeah, basic community-owned renewable energy. It's been very successful, and as a result of that, we were able to move into tackling the other side of the energy coin, if you like, which is as well as generating whatever energy we need through renewable energy, so local power for local people. We also want to help people reduce their energy demand, reduce their energy bills, have warmer and healthier homes. So we've set up our home energy service, which has got energy experts who'll go out and do energy assessments for people, and also projects to just generally promote energy efficiency. So some of you might be familiar with the Green Open Homes project we ran. We're also working on, got a big project on listed buildings at the moment. So if you've got a listed building, definitely do get in touch, because we can support you on that. And I think for both of the, and finally, other part of our mission that's important to say about is that, we've got all this renewable energy generation going on. What we really like to be able to do is actually have the power from that be directly sold to the local people near those schemes for less money. Currently, regulations don't enable us to do that very easily, but we're looking into ways that we can make that happen. And as soon as we're able to, we would definitely like to do that, because we think that's important that people who live near these schemes benefit directly from them in that way as well. So that's really what we've done to date. This project is really exciting for us because it enables us to really broaden out into new ways of doing both of those things, both renewable energy generation and helping improve home energy efficiency. So yeah, I'll talk about that a bit more in a bit. Back to you, Nikki.
Thanks, Sarah. Dave Dixon, I was just wondering if you wanted to say a couple of words about the hub.
Yeah, I'll be a poor substitute for Sarah, who knows this much better than I do. We were delighted, the Community Wellbeing Hub was delighted to be a partner in pitching for this bid, and we're going to get about, I think we're going to get about £300,000, which will employ a couple of members of staff through our partners. So one will be based with Citizens Advice, and the other one will be based with the Age UK. And basically, they will be doing some of the energy championing and advising. So, for those of you, I'm pretty certain that most of you have got a fair idea about what the Community Wellbeing Hub actually does. And we've been in place now for 4.5, nearly 5 years. But we've got 32 partners. Their logos are all there. We're offering 80+ services around a whole variety of different areas and stuff. And it's a central point of access of health and wellbeing services. We get referrals that come in from GPs, health professionals, hospitals. We've got a place up at the atrium at the entrance at the RUH. We get stuff that comes through from police. We get stuff that comes through and referrals that come through the councillors. And basically some of that stuff, all that information that comes in, there's going to be this added element through the community energy champions, where our partners, by working at the hub, are going to be able to go and reach a lot more of those people at grassroots level who need some of the support from the scheme, which is going to run for 3 years, isn't it?
That's right, yes.
Yeah.
So that's really bringing together those three partners, also supported by the Centre for Sustainable Energy, who a lot of you might know already sort of operate in Baines, providing energy advice and support, and also the University of Bath. So this is not sort of trying to do something instead of what was already being done. But what it's doing is really trying to amplify the support that's already available, to make sure that in every community there is someone who is aware of the support that's available and able to communicate that to the people around them. And that could be people who are already working in frontline services, or people who are volunteering and in contact with people who may be vulnerable to cold and damp homes, just giving them that base level of awareness that they know how to signpost into the hub, they know how to signpost into CSE for support, and they know that they know sort of which grants and other support are available, because there's also a lot of misinformation out there. So it's making sure that you have trusted messengers who can give the right information to people. So I'll pass over to Sarah.
Great, thank you. So I'd like to talk a bit about the home energy part of the Community Energy Network. So really, through this project, we want to be able to help anyone, whatever walk of life they're from, to make their home more energy efficient and bring down their bills and help tackle the climate crisis if they want to. So I want to do that by helping them insulate their homes, install renewable energy, low carbon heating, and get them the information and support that they need for that, through really working through a network of champions throughout the area. We'll be coming out to ask communities really what would be most useful and designing our programme around that, but it will include a range of different projects, as well as trainings that we'll be providing, working with the Centre for Sustainable Energy on various subjects, giving energy advice, switching your energy provider, how to manage your home heating, all kinds of practical trainings that we'll be giving to both to people, but then also to advisors. And celebration as well, so making sure that we're actually getting together frequently, or as frequently as people want, just to celebrate the progress that we're actually making in bringing down energy bills and increasing home energy efficiency. And so through this work, through the network, we're wanting to bring in really anyone who's already been working on this, which is a lot of groups. So I know Keynsham Community Energy, Transition Keynsham locally are two groups that do work on energy efficiency, but as well as, and there's eco groups around the place who do that. But then there's also a lot of other types of organisations too. So community centres that work on helping vulnerable residents get the support they need. So bringing in organisations who are already taking action, as well as inviting in anyone else who wants to get involved. So that might involve town and parish councils, for example, saying, you know, what do you feel more could be done to help people in the area who might be struggling from high bills, or who might be in a cold house. So it's really just a broad tent we want to create for anyone who's helping to improve the energy efficiency in homes. And if you go on to the next slide. So a particular focus of this, you know, we want to help everyone reduce energy bills. We appreciate that there are people all through the income distribution who are struggling with high bills or want to live in a warmer home. But one of the particular emphases of this project is people who are at risk of fuel poverty. And we know that ever since the energy crisis, particularly, energy prices still haven't gone down to what they were before the Ukraine invasion. And we don't know when even that will happen. So energy bills are quite likely to remain high, or to fluctuate. And that's a large part of these fluctuations is down to fluctuations in fossil fuel prices, so prices of gas. So we want to do as much as we can to insulate against that. And particularly for those people who are having to make the choice really between heating or eating, or who haven't been able to put on their oven. We know there's sadly a lot of people in that situation all throughout the district. And so, as Dave mentioned, we're going to do that firstly by having these two paid energy advisors through the Community Wellbeing Hub in Age UK and Citizens Advice. And these people will really be there to work with the Age UK and Citizens Advice clients and customers, as well as working with the other hub agencies to help them learn how to give basic energy advice, learn how to recognise the signs of fuel poverty when they're out doing their day-to-day business. Because often, you know, those frontline agencies and organisations will be encountering people who, you know, there might be other reasons why they've come into the hub, but their problems are being exacerbated really by having a cold, damp home. And oftentimes what you'll see is someone who's been going along fine and they've been managing in a cold home, but then maybe they have a fall, or maybe they have, you know, get poorly, and then all of a sudden, you know, it becomes really dangerous for them to be continuing to live in that cold home. And so these paid energy advisors will help to increase the awareness of these risks and how to signpost and tackle them. These 2 energy advisors will be supported by what we hope will be 50 trained volunteer energy advice champions. So these will be both just not traditional volunteers, people in their communities who want to become trained to be able to provide advice, as well as people working, as we've said, in these different agencies or community groups who might want to take training and become a little bit expert in energy advice to be able to really tackle those problems when they see them. We were looking for these champions really to run in-person drop-in sessions, do home visits, and to be where the people who most need support are likely to be. So that might be when people are coming home from hospital and coming potentially back into a cold home, or it might be in the warm spaces. It might be at different community centres and different community groups that serve people who might benefit from that sort of advice and support. And the beauty of working with a hub, and this is what's so exciting about this project, is that not only when we meet someone who's at risk of fuel poverty, there's often other issues that they'll be experiencing as well, but working through the hub, we'll be able to refer them in as a single referral and access all that other support too. So debt relief, benefits, support, all of those other services that they might need to access. So yeah, this really excited to be just amplifying the support available for people, particularly at risk of fuel poverty in Bath and North East Somerset through this project. So over to you, Nikki.
Thanks. So yeah, that's kind of summarising what we're doing on the energy advice side, and then the other side of this project, which might sort of, as we're sort of delivering the project, it might be that these 2 things sort of are experienced as quite separate things to people, but for us it's kind of 2 halves of a whole really in terms of what we're trying to achieve. So the other side of the project was focused on community renewables. So a couple of years ago the council ran some community renewable energy conversations in 3 areas. Actually they weren't in the Keynsham area, they're in so Peasdown and Wellow, East and West Harptree, and Stowey Sutton, I think. But this was sort of a workshop process that was developed by the Centre for Sustainable Energy. So rather than the kind of traditional route of a developer finds a piece of land that they want to develop on and they go out and consult the community about that project on that piece of land, this really takes a step back and says, actually, what are the opportunities locally, where could renewables be developed, and actually work with that community to look at where they might want to see development, where they might not want to see development, but really with a mind to sort of community ownership, both in terms of decision making, but then also in terms of physical ownership. So that's where kind of Bath and West Community Energy comes in, to be able to support communities to develop projects that they can then go on to either own themselves or manage the profits from those developments, so that can be reinvested in those communities into projects locally. And as Sarah mentioned earlier, the council is sort of collaborating with BWC to try to understand how we can move forward with actually selling energy locally. It's not something that's been cracked yet, but there are sort of pilot projects going on, so it's something that is also kind of a long-term goal for these kind of projects. And through this funding, we're aiming to deliver 5 megawatts of new community-owned generation across Baines by 2030. And so next steps, we're really in the early stages of setup. We're launching this project in February, so it's really just to give a sort of initial flavour of what we're looking at doing and sort of hear some early feedback from people. So until then, we're kind of in early discussion with some of the communities that are looking to take part in these activities, kind of identifying some of our potential first energy champions, sort of where activities are already happening within communities. And yeah, and then we'll really be kicking off in February. So we'll be sort of arranging a bit of a launch event where people can come out and find out more about all of these activities. Just to flag for now, if you're interested in finding out where people can go for support with home energy, we've got the Council's Energy at Home website. And I've put Ellie's email address down there at the bottom. We can also put it in the chat, as she'll be project managing this going forward. All right, we'll stop sharing so we can take questions from people.
Okay, thank you for that. Can I ask one question, I suppose? I mean, earlier we heard from Alice that the likelihood is a proportion of the green belt will be taken. How much of the green belt do we know will be lost to solar panels? Because my own opinion is that our green in Pleasant land won't be green in Pleasant for much longer. I know it's probably not a popular view, but when you appreciate that there are roofs on every building in the authority area, why aren't we trying to get people to put the solar panels on top of their buildings? And are you working with the planning department to see whether they have any control over requiring developers to build in solar panels, so that, you know, we don't keep losing green fields?
Thank you. Yeah, that's obviously a very, very important and good point. So in terms of what percentage of land might be lost to or might be used for renewable generation, the council has a target for 300 megawatts of renewable generation by 2030. The current modelling that we've had suggests that 74 megawatts of that could be on rooftops if we were to maximise all of the rooftop availability. In terms of land use, it's about 3% of total land within Baines that would need to be covered, but that depends on technology type, because obviously a wind turbine takes up a lot less space, a lot less land than a solar farm that generates the equivalent amount of energy. So it does depend what kind of renewables you're talking about, but the figure is roughly about 3% if we're to meet the targets that the council has set. So we are definitely trying to maximise the uptake of rooftop solar. We work on a scheme called Solar Together with the West of England Combined Authority, which is the sort of bulk buying scheme which brings the price down for residents, and that's something that we promote actively as a council. We're also looking at most solar on rooftops as permitted development, but we're looking at listed development orders for listed buildings to make it easier for people with listed houses to be able to install solar themselves. And we also have a net zero new build requirement now as a council, which means that developers will be made to put solar on new builds too. So we're definitely trying to promote rooftop solar, and it's not an either or. And we fortunately, I think through this process, what we want to do is work with communities to actually identify sites where they would be willing or interested to put renewables, rather than kind of the site being chosen and then that site being sort of consulted on. So just a bit more of a kind of local planning process. And I think the reason CSC developed this model was to try and build into things like neighbourhood plans. So if towns and parishes are looking at neighbourhood planning, then this is a kind of workshop tool that we can sort of bring in and use and kind of help them to support looking at how people feel about the landscape in the local area. That was a lot. Sorry.
That's fine. That's absolutely fine. I have no objection to wind turbines, but then
yeah,
Sarah.
so that's the thing. I mean, when we say renewables, I think people think solar, but actually projects that we'd like to be sort of identifying through this could be wind. We've got a community group that we're already in touch with in another part of Baines that is interested in sort of communal ground source heat pumps. So we're looking at a range of technologies. We're not just thinking about solar when we say renewables. Sorry, Sarah.
If you have a look in the chat column, Dave has left I think Dave has left, but he's left a very pertinent question about the river, which isn't being made use of.
Sarah might have wanted to.
So, yes, Sarah, would you like to, and then we'll draw a line.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks very much. Yeah, I think just to add to the question, to the point about rooftops. Yeah, we Bath and West Community Energy. Obviously, we love to do rooftop schemes. So we have done solar on a lot of schools. We struggle a bit to get businesses involved. So you look at some of the larger roofs, and you'll see that a lot of them are on business properties. Now, if the usage of power is high enough in that building, that we're able to sell the power to the building occupant. So if it's a factory or something like that, we can install solar panels for basically at no upfront cost and give them cheaper power. And this can be a way, so if it's a landlord that owns the building, for example, and they don't want to invest in solar panels themselves, but the tenant wants solar panels, so they're going to get cheaper power, that community ownership can be an option, because you can do it through community energy. So if you know any businesses who are in that situation who might want community owned solar on their roofs, please let us know. But yeah, because you have the landlord tenant issue with those buildings sometimes, and sometimes the buildings don't have that much energy demand, it can be harder than you would hope to get some of those lovely big roofs with solar power. But please do, yeah, any business parks, anything like that, let us know. I'm seeing David's question here about the river. So this is something that we have, BWC has looked at a lot. We have a small water turbine. I don't know if anyone's driven across the toll bridge in Bath and seen the Old Mill Hotel there, which I think was underwater not long ago because it suffered so much with these awful floods. But we do have a small turbine there. I will say it hasn't been an easy scheme. It'll definitely not pay itself back. It's quite difficult to actually develop hydro, but hopefully as we're seeing more renewable energy and starts being more of it, these technologies will improve to the point where we can make use of that water power as well. Because I know equally we've looked quite hard at the weirs in Keynsham and even in Bath over the years, and it just hasn't quite stacked up for whatever reason or been technically possible. But yeah, very keen to keep a watching brief on that. So yeah, thanks to David for that question.
Okay, Sarah, Nicola and Ellie, thank you very much, and I wish you the best of luck with trying to achieve everything you set out to achieve. So
thank you.
We've more or less come to the end. We've got, well, I'll just mention one thing. Next week, Keynsham District MenCap, they have a fundraising week where for every pound they raise, they get another pound from another source. Don't ask me what the source is, I don't know. But from 12 o'clock on Tuesday through to Friday, if you want to give money to anybody, then Keynsham MenCap, who do an absolutely wonderful array of activities for their members, it's money well spent. So just give you that. Future meetings, obviously thank you to everybody who has attended today. I think it's been useful, it's been interesting, and I'm sure we've all learnt a fair amount. The ladies, Alison and Sarah, will be circulating dates for the meetings next year, but currently the dates in question are the 26th of February, the 25th of June, the 15th of September and the 17th of November. And I believe we are going to try and have face-to-face meetings, as it were, live meetings. But on a night like tonight, I suspect that most of you are quite happy to be somewhere warm and not have a journey. So unless anybody's got any other business, I'm going to draw the meeting to a close. And again, my thanks for your attendance, because if people don't attend, then we don't have a meeting. And I think it's too valuable an opportunity to not have a meeting. So look forward to seeing you all in a couple of months' time, more or less, 26th of February. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Alan.
Bye.
Thank you, Alan.
Cheers.